Let's paint this fall truck with pumpkins. First, let's transfer our pattern to our surface. Just outline the truck and the pumpkins as you see fit. The sky is a mix of cobalt, blue hue, and wicker white. Try to lighten the color as you bring it down in the sky, and then add a touch of lavender to really bring a pop of color in. Keep it streaky, you don't want it to be matte colored. Then on the lower third of your canvas, paint on a terracotta color. This is Plaid Folk Art Pueblo. Don't be too precious about it, just paint it in. Now take a piece of torn up synthetic sponge and wad it into a shape. Dab it into your Pueblo paint and start painting on the back foliage or color for your trees. I'm using the Pueblo here. I bring some down into the understory. Now this is going to be layered on in colors from darker to lighter. So don't be afraid to leave some of the background showing through the white. Now using a number 12 flat brush, stroke in some tree trunks. Notice how they Y out at the top, and then you're adding some branches here and there. Many of these branches will be covered by the foliage, so don't worry about them being perfect. Add some smaller trees, which will be a little bit further into the background. The wider trees are painted with the flat of the brush, and the narrower trees are painted with the chisel edge, keeping them narrower. You can add as many tree trunks as you like. Now, I dipped the sponge into berry wine. Under the tree canopy, we want it to be dramatic, so the berry wine brings in that rich color. Let the sponge texture show through. You don't want this flat paint, so keep it light as you pounce on the color. Here I tape off the pattern of the windows so that we can bring the color up to the truck edge without worrying about getting it in our windows. Now go into your next lighter color, which is the pure orange, and bring in some of that bright orange into the trees, and dab just a touch down into the canopy. Not too much. You want that to stay dark. Dark and dramatic. Now with a flat brush, sketch on your road. Remember that it narrows as it gets closer to the truck as it's going away from us. So just pull in that burnt umber on the road. Try to leave under the truck a bit darker. Add some camel to your brush and streak it in to give the road some texture. Don't be too precious about this either, just paint it in. The edges of the road can be rough, as old dirt roads are. Here I'm just streaking, dry brushing some of the burnt umber into the ground, and here's a touch of camel too. Add a little bit of shadows and highlights. Here's 3 colors of yellow on the palette. I'm using another dry clean sponge, and I'm starting with the darkest yellow, which is yellow ochre. I'm touching in some areas with it, and then I go to the lighter yellow, which is the moon yellow. Actually, this is the medium tone, and you add more foliage. Pounce in until your sponge is getting dryish, and then go into your next lighter color, which is daffodil. How many yellows or oranges, etc. that you use is entirely up to you. Here I'm using some dioxazine purple and a dry sponge, another clean dry sponge, and I'm bringing in some more depth of color into the understory of the trees. I really wanted that deep and dramatic. Now we're going to use a custom mix of gray, which is just white with a touch of black. And I'm going to turn these trees into aspens. This is totally optional. I'm using a medium gray on the left side of the trees. And I'm painting them with a slight U-stroke shape, just slight, just to give a roundness to it. I deepened the color there on the left side with a touch of black, and now I'm doing the same on the other tree. Here I'm also adding a touch of the lavender. It's fun to use purples, lavenders as a shadow color. Here I'm adding a slightly lighter gray to the right side of the trees, and I'm bringing a little bit up into the branches. With the corner of the brush, I touched into some black, and I'm adding the little details that you see on aspens, and there, the other corner, I touched into the white, and I just squiggled a touch on. Try not to get them too dotty or too even, because they never are in nature. So here I'm doing the other tree again, highlight on the right side and adding the little details. If you get them too dotty, etc., you could just blend them out with your brush and restate as you feel the need. Just have fun with it. Don't get too precious. They're just background trees. The background here tree, the smaller tree, you want to make it just a shade darker than the front trees, and that helps it to recede into the background. Now the tires. The inner tires are pure licorice black. And then I'm going to add a touch of white, just a touch, to slightly lighten that black, so the treads will stand out in contrast, but still seem like they're black. Remove your tape. And now we're going to paint our truck the aqua color with the number 12 flat. You can use the size brush that you feel comfortable with. We're just going to fill in the color. There's no rhyme or reason, just use the flat and chisel edge of your brush to go around the details and fill your truck up with the aqua color. If you go far into a window like I did on the left side, I'll show you how I clean it up. I took a damp brush and I just wiped the paint back with the damp, clean brush. Now I'm using a touch of teal on the corner of my brush to bring in some shadows to give dimension to the truck. Again, going into the teal on the corner, bringing those shadows in. I switched to a number 10 brush because there were smaller areas, and the number 10 gave me more control. So now I'm going back into, so now I'm painting the orange pumpkin. I noticed my lines, my graphite lines were just a bit too dark. Orange is not opaque, so it would be hard to cover those lines. So I erased them a little bit with a cotton swab. Now I've double loaded my number 10 flat with pure orange and cardinal red and painting in the shape of the pumpkin. The cardinal red is on the outside edge of the brush. Blend them out a little bit if the lines, the cardinal red lines, are too stark. Highlight the center portions of the pumpkins with a touch of the yellow. Now paint the other orange pumpkin the same way. You can use the cardinal, or you can use, like I used here, a touch of the burnt umber on the second pumpkin. That is completely optional. You can paint it with the red cardinal if you wish. Add your stem with burnt umber in the corner of your brush. Now we're going to underpaint the white pumpkin because we have to go over the other orange pumpkins, and we want it pure white. So I mixed up a little bit of gray for a shadow color, and I load the brush with wicker white and that gray on the corner to create the shadows of my pumpkin. While that's drying, I'm going to go in and fill in more of the truck where I don't have the opacity I want. I noticed my window was too narrow, so I widened it with a dampened cotton swab. Using the cardinal red and the flat brush, number 10 flat brush, I pivot it to make round tail lights. We're going to let that dry and we'll come back with another coat. Again, we're shadowing around the windows with a touch of the teal in the corner of the brush. Using a darker color like this to shadow instead of an outline with a black or whatever gives you the dimension without it looking cartoony. Here we're doing the second coat on the tail lights. And then I added a touch of burnt umber to create a shadow. Just a dab in the center. Now I'm using a rake or fur brush to add a touch of grass in the foreground. Here I'm going back, I'm redoing or repainting the white pumpkin. This time I added a touch of lavender. I just thought that would be a fun shadow color on the white pumpkin. Again, using burnt umber and the flat brush, I'm painting in the stem. And I'm restating the stems on the other pumpkin. Now I'm going to bring in a highlight with camel on those stems. So now I'm going to fill in around the pumpkins. Now you could have done this before you painted the pumpkins if you liked, but here at this time I did it after. I'm using the aqua color. I'm going to use a custom mix of the white and licorice black to create a light gray to paint the truck bumper. Paint the upper part of the bumper with the lighter gray. Just fill it in. I'm using a number 10 flat for this. I'm going to add a little bit more black to darken the gray. And then we're going to paint the underside of the bumper with the darker gray to give it dimension. The little tab in the center is painted with a white, but that's totally optional. You could paint the whole bumper the gray. This would be a great place to put a license plate, a rectangle for words. Let's add some texture to the road with an old scruffy brush or the rake brush that we used for the foliage. Dab in some impressionistic leaves with your foliage colors and the number 10 flat. Just dab them here and there. And now you have a fall truck with pumpkins. In the other version I had added greenery, and there you have it.